All right. Welcome everyone to our G-Invoicing desktop workshop session. I'm so excited to invite to have you all here today. If you were lucky enough to have joined us this time last year, we were introducing a general overview of what GSA Fleet had in store for G-Invoicing. But now that we are here today on April 20th, so just a few days ago, GSAFleet.gov completed all of the development work to integrate with G-Invoicing. And so there might have been some small nuances and differences that you've seen in working in the system in the past few days. We're going to go through what those look like later on today in this session. But we are live with G-Invoicing, which is very exciting. So I'm joined here today before I dive into the agenda. I'm joined here today with some of my colleagues. So first of all, my name is Megan Lavu. I'm the branch chief for our business oversight branch here in GSA Fleet. My team is responsible for overseeing our deployment of G-Invoicing. And we work really closely with Monica Cush, who is here with us today, who is overseeing the development of the G-Invoicing. So she's on the system side, we're on the program side, we're working together. And then Ryan Bondia is with us as well. He works on my team, and it might be a name that's familiar to many of you as he has been engaging in G-Invoicing for many years now, and is most often our customer touch point on G-Invoicing. So we are happy to be here today. Today, we are hoping to provide a general overview of G-Invoicing for all of you so that we can kind of level set and all be on the same page of what G-Invoicing is, and make sure we're all using the same terminology. We're going to talk a little bit about what you can expect, what updates are going to be in gsafleet.gov, as well as testing and next steps for your agency. We'll close out the session with some resources and questions. And I want to be really clear, this invitation, GSA Fleet Desktop Workshop invitations go out to all of the GSA Fleet customers who have ever attended a training, which means we have a lot of folks on the call from different parts within your agency and who have different roles. So some of you might be the driver of a vehicle, some of you might be a financial officer in gsafleet.gov, and everywhere in between those two roles. And so we are trying to tailor this training to give everybody the basic knowledge that they need to know. Some of this information might be more than you need to know for your job. Some of it might not be enough. And so there are definitely additional sessions later on, but we do think it's important for all of our customers to generally understand what's happening. Even if it's not something that affects your day-to-day, it's good to just know what's going on because it impacts billing and it impacts orders. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ryan to talk about what G-Invoicing is.
Thanks, Megan, and hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Ryan, and I'm working on the team at GSA Fleet responsible for helping implement G-Invoicing for fleet billing. Like Megan mentioned, I've been communicating with a lot of our customers, so hopefully a familiar face, and I'm sure I will become even more familiar face as we move forward. But briefly, we wanted to talk about what is G-Invoicing. So G-Invoicing is a new application from Treasury. It's not a GSA-owned application. I know that we've had our own set of new applications and development rollout with gsafleet.gov. However, GSA Fleet does not own G-Invoicing. It's a Treasury system for managing and settling all federal intergovernmental transactions. And so what does this replace? G-Invoicing is going to replace IPAC as the method for payment and collection of funds. It also replaces manual 7600A and B agreement forms. Historically, GSA Fleet has never required these forms or any interagency agreements for the delivery of fleet services. We have always signed them and will continue to sign them at your request if you have a requirement for these forms. But in the future state of invoicing, these will all be replaced by the GT&C agreements. And so why are we moving to G-Invoicing? A lot of this has to do with standardization of data. So there's a lot of different agencies and there's a lot of different processes that all of the agencies use. And standardizing it means that we're all going to be speaking the same language, and it will increase transparency for all of these transactions. And through the standardization and the transparency, improve communication and consistency so that we can more efficiently settle our funding obligations. And so, how is this going to work? This slide briefly outlines three major steps in the process from getting set up to transitioning entirely into G-invoicing for fleet billing. So the first step is to establish a general terms and conditions agreement, a GT&C agreement. And the purpose of this is to outline the scope of the relationship between GSA Fleet as the servicing agency and your agency as the requesting agency. And so this GT&C will replace the 7600A or any other form of interagency agreement that you may have been used to using. The next step is order and authorization. And so we'll talk about this a little bit more in detail further on, but GSA Fleet is going to utilize two different processes for our different business lines. And so the purchase of agency-owned vehicles will use the standard seller-facilitated orders, and this will involve the order authorization step in G-invoicing, while fleet leasing and other recurring services will utilize the 7600 Easy process that bypasses a few of these steps, but functionally the order and authorization step replaces manual 7600B forms. For many of you on the DoD side, the equivalent may be a MIPR, for example. Lastly, the third step is payment. And so upon delivery and receipt of goods, the order is considered settled and payment is transmitted. And so this will replace the IPAC system that many of you are used to today. Who will be impacted by this? All federal agencies. That is the short answer. All federal agencies are required by Treasury to move towards the use of G-invoicing for all federal to federal payments. For GSA Fleet, this means customer billing, and it also means other payments made directly between GSA and other federal agencies. There are some exemptions, for example, non-federal business. So we have a lot of customers from our tribal organizations and DC government, as well as contractors for federal agencies who will be exempt from using G-invoicing. There's also plenty of other situations where there's secret agencies and other reasons why you might be exempt from G-invoicing, but we'll talk through those with your organization on a one-on-one basis. So I'll pass to Megan, I
Yep.
think.
Yep. I'm taking over now. Thanks, Ryan. So I'm going to go into a little bit about what what the integration with GSAFleet.gov looks like. And as I mentioned, it did happen on April 20th. So first, GSA Fleet will begin utilizing two separate workflows in G-invoicing. And I want to emphasize that these workflows are required for GSA Fleet business, where we are the seller or servicing agency. We are not able to support other processes. So if your agency is not equipped to integrate with these processes, that is something that your agency will need to work to get towards in order to be able to integrate with us with G-invoicing. So the two different processes are the 7600 Easy process and the standard seller facilitated order process. We'll start with the 7600 Easy process. We will be utilizing this for recurring services, including fleet leasing, short-term rental, and managed services. This process most closely mimics IPAC, and I'll get into the details of this in a little bit as well. On the standard seller facilitated order process, these will cover non-recurring services. Right now, that implies vehicle purchasing. There might be other services that we offer in the future, but if you're buying vehicles outright from GSA Fleet, the standard seller facilitated order process will be used. So let's dig into what this means. So on the non-recurring services side for vehicle purchasing, we will have that again standard seller facilitated process. It is called seller facilitated because you come into gsafleet.gov to place your vehicle order, and gsafleet.gov is transmitting that information to G-Invoicing, which means the way it's getting to G-Invoicing is from the seller. So that's why it's seller facilitated. It will not look any different for you if you're placing an order. You'll still get to pick your vehicle type, your cut, like all of the options associated with your vehicle, how you want it to bill. All of that information will be remain unchanged. However, there are going to be some slight differences that you'll notice in the interface. The biggest change is going to be that GSA Fleet will not place your order with the manufacturer until you have provided approval on the order authorization in G-Invoicing first. So what that means is when you come into gsafleet.gov and you go to place an order, you're going to go all the way through the steps that you do today. And then instead of us sending that order directly to the vendor, we're going to instead send that order to G-Invoicing, where you or someone in your agency will have to go in and approve it in G-Invoicing. That approval will come back to GSA Fleet, and then we will place your order with the manufacturer. The same process will be used for order modifications as well. So anytime there's a modification on your order where the price of the vehicle is changed, it will have to go through those steps, and you are going to have to approve that modified change in price before we can finalize our contract documents with our suppliers. So it is going to be very important both for you and for us that you get that order authorization completed timely so that you don't run into any issues with vehicle closeouts or funding availability associated with the timing that you place your order. Because if for example you go into gsafleet.gov on September 30th to place an order but nobody approves it in G-Invoicing on September 30th, we will not place your order until October 1st, and that moves you into a different fiscal year, different funding. So it will be very important for timely order authorization. On the recurring services side, for our leasing, short-term rental, and managed services, and anything else that we offer in the future that might be recurring in nature, we will utilize the 7600 Easy process. This is an automatic billing process. You do not have the order authorization pause step. Because these services are variable in cost, they're happening monthly. There's a lot of components to it where we can't really implement a pause step. Treasury has developed the Easy process. We are the first, to my knowledge, big entity utilizing 7600 Easy. So it is brand new to many of you and to us. And so this is something where we know a lot of you, our customer agencies, are not ready to use Easy, and that's okay. We will get there, and we'll work with you when you get there. A couple of nuances with Easy that I think are good for you all to be aware of. The first one, for those of you who are a DoD customer in any of the DoD entities like Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, any of those, you will no longer be able to have unique billing details at a vehicle level. All accounting must be consistent across the BOAC and account code for leasing. So right now, if you have a BOAC for leasing, you might have 10 vehicles under that BOAC, and you might have 10 different MIPers that support those vehicles. And so you're able to go into Wallet and provide us with those MIPers for each individual vehicle. Moving forward, that will not be possible. You have to have one MIPR to cover all of your leased vehicles on that BOAC for accidents and then non-accidents. So your accidents and non-accidents can be separate, but you still have to have full accounting for everything on your BOAC with all the vehicles assigned to it. The one thing about using the 7600 Easy process that is a benefit is that it allows our services to continue uninterrupted, similar to how they do today. It's likely that if you're on the civilian side, you won't really notice many differences in transitioning from IPAC to G-Invoicing. And I said it, I'm going to say it again. I think Monica and Ryan will say it again before we are done with this presentation because we really want to deliver this message home. Our implementation will be gradual. We are working slowly with our agencies to roll out adoption to ensure that there aren't disruptions to billing or ordering processes. We want to make sure that you are ready to use G-Invoicing the way that GSA Fleet has designed G-Invoicing to work with our business line. It's really, really important to us that it works. We are going to get into some of the details behind that as we get on in this presentation, so I won't go over it too much right now because you're going to hear it a lot more. But I really want to emphasize, just because we're ready to use G-Invoicing today doesn't mean you are, and it doesn't mean you have to. We will continue to maintain all of our legacy processes for billing that we have today. So you will continue to be able to pay your bills the same way that you do today for the foreseeable future. So, what is the impact? The biggest impact, as I've said, is the vehicle purchase process, that pause step, and then the billing for all fleet services. And so, talked about those order authorizations and how you must approve your order. I want to be clear too, when for those of you who are familiar with how to place an order in gsafleet.gov, you have the ability to build a requisition that has multiple vehicles on it. Let's say you need 10 sedans, they're all the same SIN, they'll end up being the same make, model, same color, everything is the same. So you have one requisition and you have 10 individual order numbers on that requisition. You only have to go into gsafleet.gov once to order all 10 vehicles. But on G-Invoicing, you have to go into G-Invoicing and approve 10 separate order authorizations because each order is one vehicle per order. So I just want to make sure that that's really clear too, that that is going to be how it'll work when we migrate over or when you migrate over. Vehicle modifications with price changes are not processed until an authorization is approved. And those ones are really critical because they can be very time sensitive. If there's a modification, if you realize, oh, shoot, I forgot to add this option and I really need it, you reach out to GSA, to our contracting officers to do a modification. They will process it, but you have to approve it in G-Invoicing before we can send it to our manufacturer. So you don't want your vehicle to get too far down the assembly line before that request gets through, because it could get to a point where a manufacturer says, no, we can't do that anymore. It's too late to have that modification. So there's going to be a timeliness component there. On the flip side, sometimes our vendors need to have those modifications occur. They cannot build the vehicle as was ordered for whatever reason it might be. And so we have to do a modification. They won't be able to see that order modification and proceed with building your vehicle until it's been approved. So I cannot emphasize enough, if there is one thing that you take away from this presentation today and you buy vehicles, is to make sure those order authorizations are getting approved very timely in G-Invoicing. Know who your POCs are within your agency. It is your agency's responsibility to provide that authorization, and GSA cannot do it for you. So you cannot provide authorization over email. It has to be done via your processes within your agency to approve order authorizations. And one thing to remember is that because of the order authorization and the fact that it exists, customers cannot reject billed charges when we are delivering products under an approved order authorization. Because you have already placed your order, and that order authorization is confirmed that not only is the funding information correct, but the vehicle and the goods being requested are correct. When you go to receive that vehicle, that billing is settled. Now you can reach out to GSA for information on it. You can talk to us if there are issues. We absolutely can work with you. But within the G-Invoicing system, you cannot reject those charges. On the recurring services side impacts, the biggest change is going to be in how credits are distributed to agencies. So to set the stage for how it works today, for those of you who might not be intimately familiar, if you today use the IPAC for your billing, what it looks like is if you have $1,000 in charges this month and $500 in credits, GSA processes two IPACs to you. We process an IPAC for your $1,000 of charges, meaning we take $1,000 from your agency, and then we do a separate transaction to give you the $500 credit back. So then we push $500 to your agency. If you are manual billed, like if you pay your bills manually, hopefully not by check anymore because that's going away, but by ACH or some other format, you are most likely used to seeing on your bill all of your charges and all of your credits, and you have a net amount. So if you had $1,000 in charges and $500 in credits, you would only have to issue payment to GSA for $500. On the flip side, if you had $500 in charges and $1,000 in credits and you had a remaining $500 balance credit on that statement, you are able to reach out to GSA and say, hey, cut me a check, or not cut me a check because we're not doing that anymore, but like send me that $500. You owe me $500 because of that credit. In G-Invoicing, there is not the capability for us to give money back to the agency. That is not functionality that exists within G-Invoicing easy processes. So credits have to work a unique way. And I want to be fully transparent in saying that it is going to be a difficult change, I think, for some of our customers to wrap their heads around. For the most part, I don't think it has drastic impacts to the majority of our customers' billing. But the way that credits will be settled is against other charges on the current bill, so somewhat similar to how manual bills are done today. However, if credits are in excess of the current billed amount, that excess credit is held and applied to the next month's bill. So what that means is if you have $1,000 in charges this month and $500 in credits, your G-invoicing transaction is one transaction for $500, the difference between those two. On the flip side, if you had $500 in bills and $1,000 in credits, your G-invoicing transaction this month will be $0, and next month that remaining $500 credit is applied to next month's bill. If your next month's bill is also $500, you again get a $0 G-invoicing transaction because we settle those credits against those future bills. The credits are going to be assessed at the BOAC business line and BOAC and business line level. So, for instance, if you received a credit for leasing accident charges, those leasing accident credits will only be applied to leasing accident charges in the future. So they're going to be settled that way. If you have large dollar credits, for example, because you've recovered a stolen or lost vehicle has been recovered, or there was an accident claim that got credited back to you, it could take multiple billing cycles to fully realize that credit. Now, we are happy to work with your agency and process something manually outside of the within our own financial system to issue you money back for those very large dollar claims where it would take months for that recovery to be realized. But in general, I don't think that should be the process that should have to be followed. For the most part, the credits that GSA Fleet issues are minor, and so they should be okay to be settled within that current month. It does, one of the big reasons we do see large dollar amount credits right now in the leasing program is because of poor mileage reporting. So, for example, if you do not have telematics devices on your vehicles, you enter your mileage at the gas pump when you're refueling, and you're regularly or consistently entering just 1,000 every time you go to that gas pump, but in reality, you've only driven 500 miles. You're going to have a mileage or an odometer reading in gsafleet.gov that is far above and beyond what your actual mileage is. And then when you turn in your vehicle or we go to sell it and we reconcile that mileage difference, your agency gets a huge credit sometimes. I've seen that happen pretty regularly. That will cause, could cause some issues depending on how big your BOAC is with your billing. So it's really important. It's always been important for you all to accurately report your miles. I think you'll feel it a little bit more with the way that credits have to process in G-invoicing. On the recurring services, billing disputes can be made within 30 days. It'll be very similar to the chargeback process that exists today for IPAC. After 30 days, the order is settled and you can no longer dispute it in G-invoicing. One thing I want to make super clear is that VCSS and our PDF statements will still be available. So VCSS is a GSA enterprise-wide system. That is where you can go and download billing statements and view billing details. VCSS is and never has been a way to pay your bills. It's always been to view those details. We've had questions from folks about what they can expect to see on the G-invoicing transaction, what level of detail, and it's very minimal, to be honest. It's very similar to IPAC today. And the way I like to describe it is, imagine you're going to the grocery store and you buy $100 in groceries. You put it on your credit card. When you get your credit card bill, you see the store's name and you see $100. You don't really see any other details. In order to get to those details, you have to look at your receipt and see like, oh, I bought bread, I bought bananas, I bought whatever. VCSS is like your receipt. It's all of those line item level details for your charges. G-invoicing and that G-invoicing transaction is going to be that summary of your charges. And you can expect probably about the same number of EZ transactions as you have IPAC transactions today. It should be relatively similar. So with this, many of our GSA fleet processes will remain unchanged. So we continue to be your interface to initiate vehicle orders, meaning you still come to gsafleet.gov to do anything that you do today. Fleet's billing frequency, format, and processes will largely still be unchanged. Those easy transactions will be processed at about the same time every month that your IPAC transactions are processed today. And we will continue to use VCSS again to access those billing details. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Monica to talk to us about Wallet.
Okay, thank you so much, Megan, and thank you, Ryan. The next couple of slides are going to be geared towards the wallet and showing you the importance of wallet. First, the question is, well, how am I going to be able to turn on G-invoicing for a particular business line, in particular BOAC? That's actually going to start in Wallet. and it's going to be activated at the BOAC and the business line and the BOAC level. We're going to actually add a couple new features to Wallet that will initially be viewed by internally by Fleet, where we're going to have a BOAC ready toggle, yes or no. We're also going to have the GTNC and the ALC be entered directly into Wallet. Again, this is to support the seller facilitated order workflow as well as the 7600 EZ workflow. Like Megan and Ryan had stated, depending on what services you're going to be using from GSA, whether that's reoccurring or non-reoccurring, will determine the workflow. So again, let me reiterate, non-reoccurring services, you're going to be using the vehicle purchasing program. That's going to follow the order authorization workflow. But then our reoccurring services, such as leasing, short-term rental managed services, and any other services that come down the pike in the future that are deemed reoccurring in nature, will follow the 7600 EZ process. Regardless of the process, your wallet account will all stay the same as far as these three data entry points. Turning on G-Invoicing for that BOAC and business line, entering your GTNC, and entering your ALC. Okay, supplemental accounting information for the EZ workflow. So the standard document number, and supplemental accounting information are two fields that to our civilian customers will look exactly the same. We're also going to be minimizing the amount of information DoD customers are going to be entering in Wallet. So the Wallet account for civilian agencies will look very similar to our DoD agencies, where we're no longer asking for specific fields such as the FSN, the OBAN, the limit. Instead, we're offering two optional fields. Once your BOAC has been deemed G-Invoicing ready and toggled yes, you'll have the option of entering these two fields in Wallet. And these two fields are actually directly mapped to your EZ record. So on the EZ record, there's a data field called the Requesting Agency Internal Reference Number. And whatever you enter for the standard document number in this field will be mapped to the internal reference number on your EZ record. Similarly, the supplemental accounting information for our DoD customers will also get mapped to your EZ record. Again, these two fields are optional, and you can use them whatever way your agency deems, appropriate. The standard doc number could be your MIPR number, your FMZ number, your PO number. This is a field that should be used. Again, these are two optional fields. However, if you want to be able to, let's say, reconcile your EZ transactions to your own internal accounting system, this might be a good way to add in that obligating document number that perhaps you generated in your own internal accounting system. Treasury account symbol information. This actually remains unchanged. What you entered yesterday in Wallet prior to G-Invoicing would be the same way that you enter it in G-Invoicing. It's also good to remember that whatever you're entering in Wallet at that time moving forward, any billing records will reference that treasury account symbol that was entered in Wallet. So let's say in the middle of the month, you realize that your treasury account symbol was incorrect in Wallet and you update it. Prior to updating, all the records for that month will be billed to that prior treasury account symbol, whereas all records moving forward from that point that you updated Wallet to the end of the month will be billed, and future months will be billed to the treasury account symbol in Wallet. So it's very, very important to ensure that this information is correct when it's initially added into Wallet. One thing before I talk about the 7600 EZ, again, I just wanted to reiterate at the beginning, when your agency is ready to be to go to G-Invoicing, whether that be for the reoccurring services or the non-reoccurring services, you're going to be working with fleet management, with Megan's team, in order to actually turn on, that particular BOAC or BOACs for G-Invoicing. They're going to be actually initiating inputting that information in Wallet in the beginning, just to ensure that we have consistency across the agencies. Thank you. moving to the 7600 Easy record. So what we have on this screen, the 7600 Easy record has a lot of different data elements. And the question is, where are all these data elements coming from? They may be coming from Wallet. So it's very important that Wallet information is accurate. It's going to be pulling from your GTNC, but it's also going to have some fields that remain unchanged and remain the same going from month to month. So these are those fields that are going to be those static fields. They're required, but they're going to be fields that are going to be the same moving from month to month. So your servicing account name on your Easy record is always going to say General Services Administration. The servicing group will always say Fleet Management. So all of this information is going to say exactly the same from one month to the next. Okay, these optional fields. So GSA Fleet did have the opportunity to enter values for a couple of optional fields that we thought were critical for our agencies to reconcile these records. So I mentioned the first two previously. The requesting agency internal reference number is going to be whatever is entered in that standard document number field in Wallet, as well as the requesting agency additional classification field on your Easy record will be the supplemental accounting information. Again, whatever is entered in Wallet. And then we also included two additional fields. It's the servicing agency internal reference number on your Easy record will always be the GSA statement number. So if it says LG, that means it's a leasing G-invoicing record or billing. If it's a JG, it's a G-invoicing rental record. And BG is a G-invoicing managed services. So we did have some customers say, how are we going to know if this EZ is for leasing, short-term rental, managed services? Always look at that GSA statement number. If it starts with an LG, leasing, JG, rental, BG, managed services. And then lastly, the servicing agency activity address code will be the BOAC that is entered in Wallet. Again, wanted to reiterate, I know Megan mentioned this before, but the PDF statements and billing details will still be in and available in VCSS. And also again, to reiterate, that 7600 Easy record should look very similar to how IPAC is processed today, as well as the number of fields that you see. Not to mention, I just wanted to talk about real quickly is this chargeback process. So with the 7600 Easy records, there's 30 days that a customer can initiate a rejection or a chargeback. And what that means is cash that was initially settled is then cash is moved. So then you kind of receive your cash back when there's a chargeback, that 30-day window. After that 30-day window, it is settled. There's no cash moves. However, you still can have and dispute that in the form of like a conversation that you could have with GSA, just talking about what exactly was wrong with this. What are your questions about it, and such. So there always is an opportunity to have and to reconcile your records. But you do have that 30-day where the cash is actually moved. And then that bill remains unpaid until that is reconciled. After the 30 days, it stays settled. There's no cash movement, but you can still have a conversation about what was wrong with that record. We're hoping there's going to be nothing wrong with that record, and we will not have to have these conversations on a 7600 Easy. Okay. Testing and next steps. I am passing that back over to Ryan. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Monica. And so testing and next steps. Like we've mentioned a few times, we're going to be moving very slowly with our implementation because we want to get it right. So here's an outline of the next steps, starting with the establishment of a GTNC. So currently we are working with HQ agency teams to establish general terms and conditions agreements at the highest level possible within each customer agency. And depending on the services that you use from GSA Fleet, up to 2 GTNCs will be created. So one is going to be that recurring services agreement utilizing the 7600 Easy process, and one for purchasing of vehicles using the standard seller facilitated orders. So part of these conversations is to ascertain whether your agency is ready to work in G-invoicing with the requirements that GSA has. I know that a lot of your agencies are currently doing business through G-invoicing, but you are not ready, for example, to use the 7600 Easy process. If that is the case, then nothing changes for you in the short term until your agency is ready to meet those requirements that we have. Next step will be to update wallet. This is practice even outside of G-invoicing to make sure that your wallet information is kept up to date. And like Megan and Monica mentioned, when it comes to turning on BOAX within wallet to be ready for G-invoicing, that is a step that GSA Fleet will be responsible for at this time. So we're going to work very closely with both you at the local level and the headquarter level to ensure that everyone knows what to expect for a given BOAC in the future. And so to that end, we have spoken with Treasury and ensured that IPAC and legacy processes for fleet billing will remain intact and uninterrupted until your agency is ready to move forward in G-invoicing. So like I mentioned, we are working at the highest level within all of your agencies to establish these general terms and conditions agreements. So we absolutely encourage you to reach out to us if you're at the local level and you haven't heard anything yet, but also speak to your HQ fleet managers because we may be having conversations with them that haven't gotten passed down to the local level yet. But the purpose of this is to mitigate the need for uh, thousands and thousands of agreements that trip everyone up and make it more difficult for us to do business with you. So we're trying to establish these at the highest level. And the GT&C agreement itself is not an obligation of funds, it's not a budget. And so a lot of different organizations within your agency can theoretically be housed under one GT&C agreement. We know that this will not work for everybody, so we're actively communicating with your agencies to understand the highest level feasible. But I just wanted to reiterate that that is the goal of our approach to implementing G-invoicing. And so to say it again, and I will say it again at the end, testing is so important. We want to make sure that this transition is as seamless as possible and that there's no unexpected hiccups that come out once we turn your BOAX on to be G-invoicing ready. So one step that we are eager to move forward with before going into production is testing with your agency in the G-invoicing staging environment. And so to do this, you'll reach out to the inbox shown on the screen. That's GSA Fleet underscore G-invoicing at gsa.gov. And we will help you initiate a test GT&C in the G-invoicing staging environment and then we will use some of your real fleet data to generate easy records to then populate on your side within the test environment. And this will give you the opportunity to make sure that everything is working as it should be, and you'll be able to enter the standard document number or other fields in Wallet, and we'll populate those on the easy records to hopefully make sure that you can match these two obligations and process them appropriately. Lastly, resources and support. So we have new G-invoicing resources to support customers. These will be in gsafleet.gov and will include fact sheets related to G-invoicing, such as how to get started, billing details for G-invoicing, and the GSA Fleet credit processing a change, which is one of the bigger changes in this entire process. existing resources that are still very valuable and very relevant. Vendor and customer service, customer self-service, VCSS, is not changing. And so that's going to continue to be the place where you can view your detailed billing records with charges at the sales code level for every individual vehicle. And that is, we have sides for that system. And because that is not changing, it's a really valuable way for you to continue continuity of program in the new state. We're also having the wallet user guide. We've mentioned it a few times. GSAFleet.gov is your primary interface with GSA Fleet, and wallet is a key component of that, especially when it comes to billing. And so we have that user guide available, and we're always happy to help you navigate these resources. But that's what we've got. And now I'll turn it over for questions. We'll hang out for a while. We ran the same session a few days ago, and we had a lot of really good questions coming through the Q&A, so please feel free to put them in there. If you have specific questions to your agency, the inbox again shown on the screen, GSA Fleet _ G-Invoicing at gsa.gov, is monitored by myself and several other teammates, and we can use that to support answering your G-Invoicing related questions for GSA Fleet.
Thanks, Ryan. And yeah, as Ryan mentioned, that email address is your best place to come to us if you have questions on G-Invoicing. I do want to caution, we just did a session on Tuesday and we're doing this one today, and our mailbox always fills up a lot after these sessions. So please be patient with us as we get through a higher than normal volume of emails over the next few days. But that is how you can reach our team the best. We have already a good number of questions in the Q&A box, and so feel free to keep adding them as we go through. The first one that I see up here is, does one MIPR, which for those of you who aren't in DoD and might not know, MIPR relates to an obligating document number, essentially. Does one MIPR map to one 7600 easy? And the answer is it depends. So if you use the same MIPR to pay for accidents that you pay for non-accidents for the leasing program today, you could get more than one easy transaction that hits that same MIPR. I would say a better way to think about it is one MIPR per BOAC is probably the better way to think of it. But there's a lot of different ways that you can organize your BOACs, your billing, your MIPRs. So it will depend on your agency. And I think that this actually raises a really good point that we didn't touch too closely on in the presentation, which is when you're using a standard seller facilitated order process, that order authorization and acceptance is essentially what creates your obligation, right? It equates to a 7600B form. The EZ process doesn't have something quite so similar. And so with the 7600 EZ, you are not going to have an obligation established for you in G-Invoicing, which may mean that many of your agencies have to do work to maintain obligations in your financial systems, potentially similar to how you do it today. But that's definitely something to engage with your finance team on. For example, if you're in DoD, I don't know that MIPRs are going to completely go away. They might, that's up to your financial team. But how a MIPR is used today is how I very much envision it being used similarly for 7600 EZ. So every agency will probably handle that a little bit differently. Talk within your agency about what your plans are within your agency to establish your obligations for those recurring services where G-Invoicing does not establish that obligation for you. So in what field will the vehicle tag number show on the 7600 EZ? I believe that is the one difference, Monica, right, between G-Invoicing and IPAC, in that we will not have a tag number that shows on the EZ transaction. Is that correct?
That is correct. That information would have to be obtained utilizing VCSS.
All right, this is a really good question. If you have a September bill that nets to a credit and GSA applies the credit in October, meaning the next fiscal year, then isn't GSA augmenting the receiving agency's appropriation for the following fiscal year? So it is a great question. From the way that our interpretation has worked, credits can be issued for a variety of reasons. So for example, If you have been overstating your mileage for 3 or 4 years and you get a credit today for mileage that's been misreported for 3 or 4 years, you paid more 3 years ago than you should have paid, and we're giving you the credit today, right? It's a recurring service, it's variable costs, it's a need over time. So we do not believe it is augmenting your appropriations for the following fiscal year because of that recurring nature. Likewise, you potentially could have, let's say you need new brakes and your brakes aren't fully covered under your lease rate because you use them really hard and we are AIEing because you haven't traveled enough miles to warrant getting new brakes under our policy. So you get your new brakes on September 29th. We don't get the AIE issued until October 3rd. Your AIE is getting hit in a different fiscal year than your repairs occur. It is the nature of variable costs and services under our recurring services model for those types of things to occur. There is flexibility within that for that. So I do want to emphasize that. There are ways that you, as an agency, in my opinion, could manage that. So, for example, if you know that you have outstanding credits that's going to get applied in the next fiscal year, you could process an accrual for those so that it hits your books. You get that credit in that fiscal year, and then when we bill you those credits in the future, it kind of offsets. So that is an option that you have for yourself. So there are ways that you can manage it financially depending on your agency's internal requirements. But the way that our credits are working are aligned with the vision of GSA Fleet providing you a recurring service. As for who in your agency does the approval is a question that I see, and I assume that means the order authorization approval. That is up to your agency to determine. It could be the person who places the order is also authorized to provide your G-Invoicing authorization. It could be that your financial systems are being designed to automatically approve certain types of orders. It could be that somebody in your finance office has to go into G-Invoicing to approve it. The answer will be different within your agency. So highly encourage you to get with your finance teams and establish those rules of operation for G-Invoicing. There are certain, each agency is going to have its own authorities for delegation within G-Invoicing. And so you'll need to make sure that you are following your agency's authorities for delegation. And that is not going to be a one answer fits all for every agency. Will the requesting agency additional accounting classification be grayed out for agencies other than DoD? Monica, can you take that one?
Sure. So on the screenshot, I was showing you Wallet, and it was the supplemental accounting information that is in Wallet. And then that will be mapped to the requesting agency additional accounting classification field on the EZ record. So in Wallet, it will not be grayed out because Wallet is an optional field. And for, let's say, our civilian agencies will not be recorded on the 7600 EZ. It still will be available when you download the VCSS details. So I encourage you to utilize that if that is still a field that you're utilizing today. I don't think it's even mapped on your IPAC today if you're using IPAC in the VCSS details.
Next question, if the GTNC is at the agency level with multiple ALCs, can a lower level group be selected on the order? So at this time, the way that gsafleet.gov is designed, we are going to auto-populate the group based on the header group on your GTNC. There are reasons why I promise there's logic for why we did this. There is a huge propensity, and we have seen it in the current state today, for agencies to not manage their accounting information in Wallet to the extent that it probably should be being managed, which basically just means you aren't updated in Wallet the way it needs to be updated. And we have a lot of billing errors because of it. In entering into a situation where you have to also supply a lower level group in Wallet opened the door to even further errors with billing that we wanted to mitigate to the extent possible. So for that reason, at this point in time, our G-invoicing orders will always reference the header group in your order. Now, as Monica, or on your GTNC, I mean, as Monica mentioned, we do have a lot of identifying details on the easy and standard facilitated order transactions to help you identify what the charge is for and to help it be able to be mapped to those lower level groups. We have tested with several agencies. This is the first question everyone asks us, and they agencies are finding solutions to not having it reference a lower level group. So it is possible. It might just require some creative thinking within your organization. But no, we are not sending orders that reference a lower level group on the GT&C. It is the header level group on your GT&C. Anything you want to add to that, Monica?
No, but I wanted to take the next question because I wanted to
Please do.
clarify, because I was thinking DoD. So the tag will be on the 7600 Easy under the comments section on your Easy record for civilian only. DoD will not be on your Easy. So again, that will be for civilian. The tag number will be listed in the comments data element field. Very sorry for that.
That was me. I misled us on that answer. So sorry. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
And thanks for whoever asked that question for clarifying it too.
Mhm.
All right. That is all the open questions that we have, but we do have two team members who did not speak out loud today, but who are working behind the scenes to help answer information. So we have Joseph Chantarusso and Reese Clark, who have been behind the scenes. Those names might sound familiar to you. They are also very active on the customer interface side in our mailbox, and they've been answering a lot of questions. Ryan, Monica, others, are there any questions that have been typed, answered that are worth saying out loud to folks that we want to go through? And I'm only stalling for time in case you guys have questions that you're still typing in or still thinking through. Want to give you a couple more minutes to be able to get those questions in before we end our session today.
I didn't see this question in there, but there are quite a few in there. But just wanted to mention for those that are still on the call, is the idea of non-IPAC. So if your agency currently, has the fleet services and they are being billed non-IPAC, once your agency goes towards G-Invoicing, your agency will be seeing transactions similar to IPAC. So with G-Invoicing, it's that cash that's being moved between the requesting and servicing agency. So the idea of the non-IPAC, where your agency would be pushing the money to GSA for payment, let's say for Corps of Engineers, let's say, that will no longer happen once your agency adopts G-Invoicing. Then it will be this electric funds transfer utilizing G-Invoicing, where cash is moved between agencies. So just wanted to mention that because it's something that did come up in a couple of other meetings.
And I did see one clarifying question that I think is just helpful to reiterate here that we answered. Again, the two process workflows in G-Invoicing that we've been talking about today, the 7600 Easy and the standard seller facilitated order, are non-negotiable. Those are the ways that GSA Fleet Business will be processed through G-Invoicing. So if your agency is not set up to, for example, accept seller facilitated orders, if you are only a buyer initiated order order process in your systems, you are not ready to integrate with us, and you will need to work with your teams, your financial teams and systems teams to become ready to do the seller facilitated process in order to enable G-Invoicing for your accounts with Fleet. So I just want to really emphasize that those are the only options for your engagement with GSA Fleet. All right, we do have one active question that came in. How do customers update the mailing address on paper bills? Great question. So that mailing address on your paper bill is associated with your BOAC. So we do have a separate email account, and I'll ask either Reese or Ryan or Joseph if one of them wants to put it in the chat here. But you can reach out to the one shown on the screen too. It's all the same people who manage it. We just try to siphon out the tasks. But Fleet Business Oversight at gsa.gov, we are able to coordinate that. It's an address that's recorded in our financial system. So we make a request to our financial system to get that address updated, and then it will reflect on future billing statements for you. All right. As Ryan mentioned, we do have resources we're just finalizing them right now, and we will put them up, and they will be refined. As we hear more of your questions, we get more of your feedback, we will continue to refine and update those documents to be as helpful and useful to you as possible. We, on May 1st, are enabling our very first customers to go G-Invoicing, so we are excited for that. They are really excited and eager to be our first ones to come to do G-Invoicing. So hopefully all goes well with them, and we will continue to learn and apply what we learn to future folks who enable G-Invoicing. So it'll definitely be, a transition, and we are excited to work with you on it. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions. And I think we are good to go. And I think we have one question that just came in. This one might be good if you do still have, it's this same person who keeps asking similar question. Let's talk offline, maybe just to clarify for you, just to make sure that we're not confusing you.
All right, Megan, are we
Yep.
ready to wrap it up here?
Yep. Thanks, Annette.
All right, great. So we want to thank everybody. Today we want to thank our panelists, Megan and your entire team, those on the screen and working behind the scenes to answer the questions as they came in. Thank you everyone for attending today's desktop workshop. And as a reminder, the slides will be sent out with a certificate, and then the recording will be posted as well. So we wish everybody a great day. Thanks for being a part of the presentation today of our session, and we'll see you next time.